Okay.
Good morning. Sorry, guys. A sincere apology. I lost track of time.
We're gonna dock your pay, Steve.
Yeah, I'll dock it twice.
Okay.
Rabbi,
Hello.
Okay.
you guys ready?
Ready.
Let's do the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai.
Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher kiddushanu
Mitzvotov,
v'tzivanu laso
Torah.
Torah.
Blessed are you,
Blessed are you, Adonai our God,
ruler of the world, who
world.
sanctified us with your commandments. Command us to engage in
The words of Torah.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello. And welcome to everybody. And Charlotte is sending out a note saying that we're going to be opening up in about 10 minutes, but I see that's not necessary. The reason for the delay today is Steve was kidnapped.
Ah,
Ah,
by terrorists.
I performed a mortal sin.
Oh my
So
goodness.
please forgive me, Kol Nidre.
Yes.
okay.
So I think a few weeks ago, we talked about somebody else volunteering to be the second moderator. Do we have any volunteers for that? If
I don't know
so,
how to do it at all.
Yeah.
please
Uh,
I don't know.
Actually, Pam has done it in the past, so she might be able to help.
Okay.
I don't know where I am.
Richard is in the cosmos.
Yep.
Yes, we're in God's realm
Okay.
up there.
Well,
in heaven.
for some reason, this is Evelyn. For some reason, I'm not up on the screen.
I had to go into where, where it says mute on the corner up there and hit start video again. So
Um,
No,
no.
no, that doesn't work. Huh.
You were on just a minute ago, I saw you.
Well, I did a disappearing act, evidently.
Then I see up, if you go up where it says view, there's a thing that says hide self view. And maybe I have to hit that and hit it back again. I don't know.
Maybe I'll just leave and try coming back in again.
It's another way.
Yeah, let me try that. Okay.
Liz and Sire still don't have their, well, they may not be in front of their,
Before we actually start the discussion,
yes.
I've always thought of the Torah as the constitution of the Jewish people, and the Talmud as the body of laws that have been interpreted from like our Constitution has all these laws on various books.
Oh, there I am. Okay.
And so that's how I feel about the Torah. It's the constitution of the Jewish faith.
What was the question?
Wasn't any question. I was making a general comment before the discussion started of
Well,
my
Richard, I think
what
that was
the-
really, that was a very,
what the Torah, what the Torah is.
I think that was a very good description.
I
Thank you
agree. I agree.
for pointing it out.
Yes.
I thought it was interesting. My sermon on Rosh Hashanah morning about the binding of Isaac was quite shocking. A lot of people said, well, switch it to the creation of the world, just switch it. And, but the binding of Isaac is really entrenched in Jewish and Christian traditions. So it's considered very important. And so,
But Rabbi, we never have heard about a resurrection in Judaism.
Right.
this is the first time that it's been mentioned. Yes, so there's definitely lots of sources that reference that.
Huh.
And and especially in terms of Isaac, because some of the commentators do say that Abraham carried through on it. My sermon in the evening, which was about the lion chasing the guy in the jungle, Larry made the very astute comment that there are no tigers in the Amazon.
True, they're only in Africa, I mean, Asia.
Asia, yeah.
Asia. But they do have like jaguars. So it could be a jaguar.
A cat with a different stripe.
Right,
Exactly.
a different coat.
Had of a different color.
Image of the guy hanging there holding a root with the tiger above him trying to eat him and the cobra below him trying to sting him or bite him. People found that quite engaging.
It was an interesting sermon.
Yes, but in a sense, you said, let things go their natural way. It may turn out for the best anyway. If you try and change things, you may bring disaster on yourself, whereas let things be and it may work out anyway.
Right. And sometimes that's the case. So just hold on to the root and wait for the tiger to fall into the pit.
Hang in there.
Rabbi, it was amazed me though, is that the guy was able to hang on that period of time. He must have been pretty darn strong.
Strong arms, right? Strong upper body.
It's a parable. He could hang on for days in a parable or months, years.
Good point. Good point.
But you know what's interesting is is it Elijah who went up to heaven, and I think we discussed that, and so that sort of talks about resurrection too. There's a chariot of fire, and I think you pointed out that perhaps it's that he's still living because he comes to us during the Passover service.
He gets pretty drunk on Passover, it seems.
Yeah. Not for me because I usually have grape juice.
That's you, but Elijah,
Elijah.
My husband used to take the glass and empty it into his own glass. And then when they got to be teenagers, they conspired before the Seder and they were all watching him to make sure that he was not misbehaving, They caught him.
But if one of the major reasons for religion is people's fear of death, right? In the ancient world, every time there was lightning and thunder, people thought the lightning's going to hit us and kill us. Or every time there was a huge flood or anything, people were afraid and they wanted to pray to a greater power to save them from death. Then, resurrection is a natural result of religion, that you'd want religion to provide you with a way out or with a way back, maybe more accurately. And a lot of the, I guess Christianity is very clear that it has this resurrection of their founder, who was a Reformed rabbi in Jerusalem quite a while ago. And so I figure if he can get resurrected, so can I. And that was a joke. But
if you have to tell us, it's
You
bad.
have to tell us it's a joke because we didn't laugh initially.
We got it.
And the binding of Isaac sort of reminds me of I was watching TV the other night, just in fact after I came home from temple, and on 80 they had something about Mesoamerica, about Central America, and David Yeardman. I don't know if you know who he is.
He's got a good program.
He got a program, and he was talking about these excavations. And as I got down, now there were 1,000 years BC, 3,000 years ago. We're getting about to the time of the biblical time, 3,000 years ago. And they found a body in there, the bones of a body that had been dismembered.
Whoa.
And the archaeologist said, anthropologist said, this is human sacrifice. He said, we find that when they bury someone who has not been sacrificed. All the bones are together. But here, the bones were separated, they were been cut apart. And that's typical of human sacrifice. So we see that probably in Eastern Europe as well as Mesoamerica, 3,000 years ago, there were probably human sacrifices going on. You know,
But was not Isaac at the time of the binding in his 30s? He was an
Well,
adult.
that's one interpretation that some of the sages in Talmud counted the chronology, and they came up that the Isaac was born 36 or 37 years before this event. So therefore they then said, well, Isaac must have been a 36-year-old guy. But the story doesn't, if you just read the story, it doesn't seem to follow that. You get the impression that Isaac was a small child.
right? He was trusting to his father. Is how many? Let's see, how many children did he have through Sarah, if I remember right? Through Sarah,
One.
four.
Oh, just Isaac originally, because they had a lot of trouble. They went to fertility doctors for years. And, all right, thank you,
Okay,
Marsha.
okay.
With that,
I got it.
Thank you. But then Sarah said you can use a surrogate, but in those days they didn't do test tube babies. He just took a concubine and had sex with her, and then any resulting children were credited, at least in theory, to Sarah. But that didn't work out so well either, and that created a lot of family tension, as you can imagine. And Sarah then ordered the concubine and her son out into the desert. She told Abraham to basically throw them out into the desert. So there was a lot of brutality, and theoretically they should have died in the desert, but God took care of them, so they did. But you see this theme of either wanting to stay alive or come back from the dead, or wanting to kill others as a way to increase one's chances. You see this all over this part of the Torah. I mean, we're very panic stricken about dying, and we've always been. And today we don't talk about it as much or think about it as much, but basically most of these stories revolve around fear of death. Now, okay, good morning, everyone. And we were just talking about the High Holy Days a little bit. If there's any other quick comments about High Holy Days or about the reading. This is our final reading in the Torah. Sefaria, which is a website with all the Jewish sources, which I've mentioned before, is starting a weekly Torah commentary that they'll send every Monday. So I'm very eagerly looking forward to the first one. And if it's good, I'll share it with you. If not, and you can also sign up on your own if you choose. And they're probably going to be less directed than this. It's probably just going to say, here's the parsha, here's various commentaries, here's various ideas. Whereas the way we do it here is there's one central discussion topic of the week, which is kind of nice. But we'll have to see what Sefaria is very well regarded, and it may turn out to be something we can use. Okay, any other opening comments or opening responses of any sort? Marcia, Liz, Evelyn, anybody? Donna? Donna got into a bar fight.
Donna what? Oh, yeah.
You got into a
did.
bar fight.
But I won.
You
Good.
won.
Good.
The other person looks much worse.
Much worse.
No, I had a thingy removed from my nose yesterday.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah, we're all lots of time and money at the dermatologist.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are on page 188. This is the final portion in the whole Torah and the final portion in the book of Deuteronomy. We know that the book of Deuteronomy is written later than the other four books and was intended partially as a summary, partially as a revision. And so let's see what they have to say. Who'd like to read? Bottom left-hand corner of page 188. Okay, Pam.
Okay, glad to finally see you after trying to get on.
Apologize for that.
No, no problem. Okay, the heritage of the congregation of Jacob. In his farewell message to the Israelites, Moses again recites a poem. He recalls the spiritual experience of the people at Mount Sinai, declaring, Adonai came from Sinai, God shone down them from Seir. Lightning flashing at them from the right, lover and indeed of people, their holy ones are all in your hand. They followed in your footsteps, accepting your pronouncements, when Moses commanded us with the Torah as the heritage of the congregation of Jacob. About to die, the aged leader impresses upon the people their historic relationship to Torah. It originates in the lightning flash at them at Mount Sinai. It is the proof of God's love for the people of Israel. Following the commandments of the Torah is proof of the people's loyalty to God. Torah is the unique heritage of the congregation of Jacob, of the Jewish people. In commenting on the meaning of Moses' observation on the relationship of the Jewish people to Torah, Rashi writes, we have taken the Torah and will not abandon it. For Rashi, the people have chosen to accept the Torah and they are defined by their attachment and devotion to it. Torah forms the basis of Jewish tradition. There can be no Jewish people without it. Adherence to wisdom, ethics, and rituals is essential for preserving the people.
Okay, thank you. And it tells you where Rashi's comment is, and you can find on Sefaria Rashi's commentary to the book of Deuteronomy, and you can look it up and see the original source. As we've said here, Harvey Field summarizes the sources. He doesn't print them usually. All right, well, what do you think? Rashi says that Torah forms the basis of Jewish tradition. There can be no Jewish people without it. That would seem to have been disproven. The state of Israel was created by socialists who wanted to perpetuate the Jewish people without the Torah. Now there's a group that's trying to use Netanyahu to take over the government who say, no, we don't need a constitution. We have a constitution. It's the Torah. And you've got basically 50% of the Israelis saying we want a religious country and 50% saying, no, we want a Western democracy. And so you think that Rashi's comment is correct or not correct? Pam?
Why would they downplay the Torah? I would think that would be a big deal.
Well, the 50% that are more secular or more Western democratic are, they may like the Torah personally or may not, but they don't want the state of Israel run based on the Torah. They want it to be a secular country like any other country, like France or England or America or wherever. And, so they disagree with Rashi. There can be no Jewish people without Jewish tradition, is what Rashi says. Yes, Richard.
Well, there's a dichotomy here. You can have a modern Jewish state, which is secular, and at the same time, you can have the Jewish people following the laws themselves rather than the government telling you, you have to do this, this, or this. So I think you can have both at the same time. But as I made my comments before we started, for me, the Torah is the constitution of the Jewish people, but it's not necessarily the constitution of a government, of a secular modern government. Unlike like Iran, which is a theocracy.
Right. And what's interesting is that Israel does have basic laws, which were laws that are regarded as semi-constitutional. So even in the absence of a constitution, there's something that they refer to that's like considered like a constitution. But one of the reasons Israel did not create a constitution was the Orthodox objected to it. Marcia.
So many of the laws, things that are in our constitution, other countries, are in the Torah. There is a lot of things that follow. Isn't it possible that is the problem? That's what I'm trying to word this right. Is the problem that modern people in Israel are afraid that it's going to be an Orthodox ruling in the state of Israel if they allow no constitution? Are they worried about the Orthodoxy taking over?
Well, making it a theocracy in essence.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Right,
sure.
just Iran, it would be a Jewish theocracy, just like.
Yeah, I'm asking about this one though. I'm asking about Israel in particular, in this.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, secular Israelis these ultra-Orthodox rabbis think just like the Ayatollahs in Iran. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. So yeah.
Here in the last few years, even the Jewish people have had problems making aliyah. The list of things that they have to prove that they're Jewish, one of them is a letter from a rabbi, and the Orthodox, which works with the Jewish agency and all, want that rabbi to be an Orthodox rabbi. There are a few conservatives that are on the list, but they don't want anybody making aliyah, even Jews that are not basically Orthodox, or at least have an Orthodox letter from a rabbi, Orthodox rabbi.
And I remember years ago, this is going back 25 years ago, one of my friends got married in Israel, and he was from an Orthodox home in Los Angeles, and they went to Rabbi Maurice Lamb's synagogue, and Rabbi Maurice Lamb's one of the more famous Orthodox rabbis of that generation. So his rabbi wrote him a letter to get married there. And the Orthodox rabbinate in Israel, which is the only ones who can marry you, wouldn't accept it. They said he's not Orthodox enough. And so they had to bribe an ultra-Orthodox rabbi in Los Angeles to write a new letter based on the old letter, plus a suitable bribe, and then that letter was accepted. But it was just such corruption. My friend was so disgusted. But they got divorced shortly thereafter anyway. But
Did they get a gift?
Didn't work, huh? What is the definition of making aliyah?
When you move to Israel and become a citizen.
And that is actually, when we made aliyah, I did not understand totally this. I thought we were applying for Israeli citizenship, but that's not true. If we had been, we would have had to have given up our U.S. citizenship. So we were applying for a lesser than that, and the Israeli government, by their good graces, gave us citizenship, which then we could keep our U.S. citizenship.
Dual citizenship.
Dual citizenship, yeah.
I think what Don is referring to is that what they do is that you wait 5 years as a temporary resident, and then they just give you the citizenship, because there's a law in America that if you actively pursue another citizenship, that can be the grounds for losing your American citizenship. However, if another country just gives it to you without you asking, then you can't. So there's a whole, and this was a specific law that was for a specific reason. So they probably wouldn't bother you, but there's a way to do it to make sure that you won't have any problems later. But I didn't want Israeli citizenship. So at the end of my 5 years, I was still studying in rabbinical school, and I had to request a 1-year extension because I needed 1 more year to finish rabbinical school. And so they gave that to me, and I didn't have to become a citizen. but the rabbinical program in Israel, at the end, they said they wanted me to go to the army and do 4 months and become a citizen, and I refused, and they backed right down.
Huh.
And,
That is the ruling today, the 5 years. When we went in 1992, we did not have to wait. We got citizenship immediately.
but things are getting
changes.
much more stricter because each side is trying to manipulate it so they get citizens that will vote for them, for their
That's
side.
right.
Evelyn.
Wasn't Israel originally created as a safe haven for Jews who did not feel that they could continue living in other parts of the world and therefore would migrate to Israel and have a safe haven, whether they were religious or not religious? And all of these political machinations, shall we call them, occurred after Israel was created. And then you began to have the Orthodox, I think, who originally did not have such a powerful say in the building of the country. It was the socialists and who put the sweat equity, shall we say, into building Israel. And then the question is, should the country remain secular and those who wish to have a more orthodox view be permitted to continue living there, or should the Orthodox have as much political clout as they have evidently begun to accrue? So, yeah, maybe that is the problem with Israel at the moment. They're not quite sure what they are, in effect.
And all of this discussion comes up because, we're thinking about it because of the judicial reform there, which is so incredibly controversial. And just to put in a plug for one of my October courses is on crisis in Israel, which is going to focus on this. And the other one is on Reform Judaism. So both of them, I think, would be relevant to some of the people in the group. Unfortunately, they're both in the mornings. So if you work, then it's a little bit of a problem, but we've worked around such things before, and we can do it again if anyone is interested in is working in the middle of the day. Imagine that. Steve.
Cy had his hand up.
Cy.
Oh, well, the only comment I had was that the Torah and Israel are two separate things. One has nothing to do with the other. You don't have to believe in the
Well,
Torah.
and that's what Rashi is trying to stifle people like Cy. Rashi does not like Cy and does not want his ideas being heard, really, right?
Right.
So, Cy, so why do you disagree with Rashi so vehemently?
It's not vehemently, but I think as individuals, we don't have to subscribe to anything except getting along with our neighbors to be Jewish. If we want to live in Israel, we can live there without being Jewish, or if we want to be Jewish, be the kind of Jew that we want to be, rather than how the Torah subscribes we're supposed to be.
All right, so you see,
Individual freedom.
So Cy is a classic liberal thinker who does not believe that any one interpretation has to be accepted, but Rashi didn't look at it like Cy at all. I mean, these are two opposite approaches almost. Marcia, Minya, Richard, anyone? Steve?
No.
No, okay. Pam, Liz, Richard? No, okay. Who'd like to read on?
You want me to keep going?
Sure, but let me just say that now like on the Rosh Hashanah morning, we read the Torah, and we had 3 different groups bless the Torah before and after. And the blessing is Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Amim. We bless you, God, who have chosen us from among all the nations to make us your chosen people. And so that was not the blessing that is going to be described here in the next couple paragraphs. Okay, Pam.
Let me see where we are. Rashi's emphasis, is that where we are?
Yes.
Rashi's emphasis on defining the Jewish people by its relationship to Torah may be based on earlier comments by Rabbi Elazar. In a rhetorical question, Elazar asked, "What was the blessings Moses made before reading the Torah?" He answers his question with the claim that Moses said, "Be praised, O God, who has chosen the Torah and made it sacred and finds pleasure in those who fulfill it."
How that's different than the Torah blessing that we read in synagogue.
Yeah.
That's different.
Moses, Rabbi Elazar stresses, does not say those who study it or meditate on it. He claims that God finds pleasure in those who fulfill it, who practice it by carrying out its commandments. It is the practice of Torah that transforms it into the heritage of the congregation of Jacob.
Okay, so religious studies theoreticians argue back and forth. What is religion? Is religion talking about religion, or is religion doing religion? Now, most people would say it's a little bit of both, right? But there's extremes. So there are those who say that you want to find people who do stuff. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to know what they're doing. But if they do it, that's religion. And people like us who are sitting around talking about it, we're just kind of spectators. We're just tourists. We're just anthropologists. We're interested in it, but doesn't mean we're inside it. The people who are inside it may be less self-reflective. Having an awareness of what we're doing is not necessarily religion. And Minya, your husband, you can tell him I mentioned him on the Zoom a few minutes ago. And that even though there may not be any tigers in the Amazon, he should be careful because there's maybe tigers in our neighborhoods. Oh,
He wants to know if he can ask a question.
Well, sure.
My question is,
Where are you?
why, as a Reformed Jew, should I continue to support the state of Israel, considering the fact I don't have the right of return according to what's going on? My children, who were not born Jewish, but are Jews now, they don't have the right of return. I've got other charities I can give money to.
And that's a very good question. I have a friend who said exactly that. He said, I'm not giving any more money to them. They don't care about me. Why should I care about them? That's a very personal question. I can't answer that for you, Larry.
Well, if in 2024 or in the years later, our country is no longer a democracy and is an authoritarian, and we have an authoritarian government, which usually means Jews are going to be openly discriminated against, where should I go? Canada? Costa Rica? What would you suggest? Maybe Jamaica. I could be your neighbor.
Larry, you and your wife can stay in my house there for say up to a month.
Thank you very much. That might be necessary.
Not forever, Larry, just for a month. Everyone heard that?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, Larry asked a
yes,
good question, though. Larry asked a
it's
good question.
Yes, Pam, you want to respond?
No, I think it's a good question that he asked. That
A scary question.
yes.
Well, I think we have to face it.
No, we have to vote.
I don't think
Well,
that's the answer anymore, although I do recommend that you vote.
We can hope that if things get bad in this country, which is certainly a possibility after what we've seen the last number of years, that Israel would accept us. And, the odds are that they would probably. And the American community, if the American Jewish community is going there in large numbers, hopefully the government there will just say, well, anyone the American Jewish community accepts as Jewish will take in.
What do you,
But there's no guarantee. Yes, Donna.
what do you feel about in that direction of the J Street Jews that are out of Florida that are very, very much against the state of Israel.
Well, there's always been a variety of opinions, and there's always been people who are pro and against, and so I'm not going to answer too much specifics because I don't want to get into politics. But
Okay.
I think the question here is more, how does religion and ethnicity connect to one another? And, can somebody go around America saying, I'm an ethnic Jew, but I have no connection to religion? And then the polls, they're showing a lot of people like that. I identify as a Jew ethnically or culturally, whatever that means, but I do not identify with Judaism as religion at all.
But the government would call you a Jew whether you consider yourself one or not, as Hitler did,
Yeah,
So,
according to Rashi would say that if you're a Jew, you have to have some connection to the religion. If you completely divorce yourself from the religion, then that he doesn't like this idea of cultural Jew. But this is 1,000 years ago, so I'm not saying that Rashi is right for our times, but you can see the dilemma. I mean, in our synagogue, we're trying to encourage a broad understanding of religion, that we're trying to see religion as something that can help you understand your life and character traits and values and all sorts of things, and somehow develop your own sense of personal meaning out of that. It's not just about the Torah and the Talmud and following, specific laws. It's about personal meaning. And that can be best done, with, a group and with some organized activities and so forth. But not everyone's interested in that. I mean, I spoke to one person recently. I said, well, we're trying to help you develop personal meaning. And they said, no, I don't want personal meaning. I just want to play a little pickleball and retire and relax. And I don't really care about personal meaning. I said, but, you're 75 or whatever age, or 85, don't you want to reflect back on your life and understand, what was good, what was bad, who you are, what you stand for? They said, no, no, I just want to relax. So with that attitude, then it was hard for me to sell the synagogue, right? Even in a broader sense. Sai.
Well, but realistically, that's what's happening all over the world. People find that they don't need quote unquote God. They're willing to do it, to spend the rest of their lives without a God. And you begin to wonder why. Have they found something that's more meaningful than those who are religious? I don't know the answer, but I see the numbers, and if you're religious, it's scary.
But I was presenting synagogue activities already in a much broader way. I wasn't telling this person they had to believe in God, or that. I was saying we can help you to find personal meaning, regardless of belief in God or no God, or Jewish ritual or no ritual. But they weren't interested in the search for existential meaning in any way. So it's, I guess, kind of a logical extension of the loss of interest in God. People got interested in God partly because of what we said, fear of death, and partly and the collateral to that is, if you're fearful of death, you want to understand why your life is meaningful. What does your life represent that it may end someday? And if you don't care about if you don't care about that, then I guess you don't want to think about it. It's hard for me to understand. I can see why people would not want to focus on God, but I would think everyone would want to focus on some sort of meaning of life. But apparently that's not true. Minya, Marcia?
Not if it costs them $1,000 a year, apparently, so.
But do you think for free they would be interested, or it's also a matter of putting in hard work because you don't figure out the meaning of your life by listening to a 10-minute lecture? You have to work at it, right? You have to read, you have to think, you have to have discussions, you have to make an effort, and even then you may only get part of the way, but it's definitely takes work to find meaning. Pam? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
No, I think, yes, I agree with you that you have to communicate with others, whether they think like you or don't think like you, if only to formulate in your own mind. I think you have to have a divergence of opinions and attitudes and thoughts. And at that point, you assess what you have become aware of and crystallize in your own mind at that point what you feel is meaningful to you. But unless you have input of all of these other ideas, then you've got a one-track mind, what you originally thought, and there is you don't have the ability to consider other options, shall we say.
Okay, let's keep reading. Pam, you'll keep being our reader.
Yeah, I'll do one more thing. Nachmanides widens Rabbi Elazar's claim to include both those who are born Jews and those who convert to Judaism. He points out that Moses does not speak of the Torah as belonging to the house of Jacob or to the seed of Jacob, which could have led to the assumption that Torah is the heritage only of those who are born Jewish parents. Instead, he emphasizes that the Torah is the heritage of Kehilat. How do you pronounce that, Rabbi?
Yaakov.
Yaakov, or the congregation of Jacob. It is not an exclusive birthright, but a legacy that can be adopted or chosen by any person.
And this is something very interesting because there's a midrash that all Jews all the souls of every Jew were at Mount Sinai, past, present, and future. So how do you include the soul of someone who's going to convert 1,000 or 2,000 years later if all the souls of Jews have to have been at Mount Sinai? So the rabbis said, well, God knows who's going to convert even 2,000 or 3,000 years forward. So their souls were at Mount Sinai too. So, but that makes it a little bit like everything's a matter of fate, because if you're living today and you're thinking of converting, it means your soul was already at Mount Sinai, therefore that God already ordained that you were going to convert. So it's kind of takes away your free will. But they had to do that because they couldn't exclude the souls of people who would convert because that they had to have been there. So they play back and forth with that idea. So this is the speech of Moses. He's trying to tell them that Judaism is important. Does it sound any different than when I retire, what my last sermon might be like?
Probably
Very
not.
similar?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Wow. All right. Well,
By
okay.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I remember for the first time that I noticed when it was Simchas Torah and Rabbi Moss told me, I said, why is that look so different in the Torah when they held up the Torah? Because that
Right.
code that Moses wrote is in a different set. It's inscribed differently into the Torah itself. It looks very different.
Yes. The writing is different.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be at the end of the parsha a little bit where Moses already died. Yeah. Okay, who'd like to read? We're going to skip the box and go to page 190. My favorite medieval Jewish philosopher, Maimonides, top left-hand corner.
I'll read it.
Okay, Evelyn.
In his discussion of the importance of Torah to the Jewish people, Moses Maimonides observes that as soon as children begin to talk, parents must teach them the words, Moses commanded us with the Torah as a heritage of the congregation of Jacob. And Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Children must be taught the importance and the lessons of the Torah as soon as they can speak. Teachers, says Maimonides, are to be employed if parents cannot provide education. Every person is commanded to study Torah, whether poor or rich, in sound health or sick, young or old. One must study until the day of death. Maimonides even suggests how the time for studying the Torah should be divided. 1/3 of the time should be spent on the Torah, 1/3 on commentaries and the Talmud, and 1/3 thinking and reflecting upon what has been covered. One subject should be compared to another, questions should be asked, ethical rules should be inferred from the standards found within the Torah. Furthermore, the study of Torah may not be postponed with the excuse that one has no leisure time. Should such a thought enter your mind, writes Maimonides, you will never win the crown of Torah. Instead, he concludes, quoting Avot 1:5, make the study of Torah a fixed obligation. For
And Maimonides had a very busy schedule. Well, early in his life, he didn't have to work because his brother was a very successful businessman, and his brother subsidized him so that he could be a full-time scholar. But then there was a shipwreck, and his brother was killed, went down with the boat. And so his brother died, and that was it. So then he had to work, and he was a medical doctor, like Richard. Is Richard still here?
He is here, but I can't see his picture.
Okay.
I'm
So
here.
Okay, so Maimonides was like Richard, except he had a different specialty, I think.
General.
Maimonides was a general doctor.
You're right.
So Richard had more training than Maimonides, but Maimonides was more of a Torah scholar than Richard. No offense to Richard. But anyway, he then he worked for the Sultan of Egypt, and he was the personal court doctor. So he personally took care of like the king and his family and the people in the court and everybody like that. And then he came home, and his wife had dinner waiting for him, which was a nice benefit of the pre-feminist age. Today he would have to order Uber Eats. And then his house was filled with people waiting to see him. And this is not like an accountant where you could say, I can't do your taxes. These people could get very sick or die if he didn't see them. So it wasn't really an option, so he ate dinner quick, and then he had to see patients. And so it was a very busy life. So he had to find whatever time he could to devote, but it's a very important value in Judaism. And one of the nice things about our temple is that a very high percentage of people are interested in this sort of stuff, which is very good. Marcia.
So I'm going to hit the feminist thing here. Does this apply to women?
No.
Oh, in Orthodoxy, do they have to study to the extent of men?
Yeah.
I guess in Orthodoxy, everything is divided by gender. So there's gender roles. And in Reform Judaism, we basically have done away with gender roles. So men and women are treated exactly equally. But we're seeing that you can take that too far, because if you have a man and a woman, then and there's still distinctive identities, which is not taken for granted, right? There's many people now today that feel that there is no such thing as anything.
I have to call you back. Okay. Bye.
That was Maimonides. He's not happy.
He's mad. That was my daughter in Massachusetts. I got to find my way back here now. Here.
But if you see the genders as still having a certain differences, then it may not be possible to wipe out all differences, but maybe some of you can tell me your experiences in that regard. But certainly in reform, any law would apply equally. So there's 11 of us here right now, and there's 4 men and 8 women. So I think. Yes, Donna.
Yeah, I can tell you, and this is disregarding any religion, any orthodoxy or conservatism or anything, just the state of Israel and the people that live there, is that it's a very male-dominated society. And living there as a woman after my husband passed away, and by myself, only because of my husband's absolute good graciousness and all with the various and sundry people like the lawyer, the whatever, the ones that did our taxes and all of these, the car guy who said, now Donna, your car is my car. So they all kind of adopted me because of him. So I really didn't have that much of a problem getting around, but it is a very, very, very much a dominated society. One little example, I was walking to the bank coming from one direction. There was a guy coming from the other direction, and we were both going to go into the bank, and he opens the door first. And I thought, oh, isn't that nice? He's opening the door for me. But then he nearly knocked me down getting in front of me. So, it's an interesting place. I loved it.
Better here?
Back. Huh?
Is it better here?
I'm waiting for the dot.
Is it better here in this country for you?
Would I rather be here than there?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Probably half and half. I'd rather be here because my children are here, and at my age, I need my children. But I loved living there. There wasn't anything even though it was difficult, there wasn't anything I didn't love about it.
Other comments? So Maimonides is saying that Torah study is very important. Is it very important? I mean, how many people here have been studying more than 3 years?
Probably about, I'm not sure.
How many people have been studying from 1 to 3
Well,
years?
How about years ago? Does that
At least
count?
3, yeah, because that's
No.
pre-COVID, right?
No, pre-COVID doesn't count. And how many people have been studying just new? All right, so what is your impressions? I mean, does this Torah study with Harvey Fields contribute to anything in terms of values, in terms of appreciation of life, in terms of developing identity, in terms of anything useful, or at least is it intellectually stimulating? I mean, what is your impression of this approach, and do you agree with Maimonides? Sai? Okay, Pam?
It makes you think.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the part I like about it. It makes you think.
And so what does that do to you, for you, or to you?
Well, you just, when you hear other things related, you look at a bigger picture because you're thinking, you've seen this other, we've done this other text and everything, and it just, you just think more.
Marcia?
I agree with Pam. I mean, when I went to Select services this year, and I wasn't reading it wrote as much. I was pretty much stopping and thinking about what was on that page, and did I believe this way? And, so of the discussion that we had, he had in these classes, you start interpreting in your own mind. And I think that's growth for the individual.
So if you start interpreting in your own mind, then you become your own Judaic thinker in a sense, or your own personal interpreter. Evelyn?
When, let's say 40 or 50 years ago, I would have studied Torah and had a particular outlook because of my age and personal experience. At my age now, I look at it going back and thinking back all of those years, and my experience has been much more varied. I hope I have a much more mature outlook on what I read. And so I would bring to these studies a different feeling and hopefully a different outlook, one that I hope is more sobering, more mature than I would have 40 or 50 years ago. And I think it depends also on the age and life experiences that one brings to the studies that determines what you get out of it as such.
Okay, Liz?
I mean, I just feel like it helps you focus on other deeper, more meaningful things in your life rather than your work or things that are really, I mean, insignificant compared. I mean, for me, it helps me remember maybe some of these stories I learned, I mean, in a more elementary way, but when I went to religious school as a kid, or perhaps when my son learned them when he was at the religious school, I like that it gives me something larger and more important to focus on.
Responses to Liz, Minya?
We agree with her, though.
Okay. Okay, Pam, you want to keep reading, or we already moved it over to who was reading?
I was reading. Do you want me to
Okay,
continue? Do you want me to continue?
Yeah.
For Maimonides, no commandment is equal in importance to the study of Torah. Indeed, the study of Torah is equal to all the commandments because it leads to the practice of Torah. He concludes, thus the study of Torah takes precedence over practice. In Maimonides' view, the Torah constitutes God's truth given to the people of Israel. Deciphering that truth and understanding the commandments motivate one not only to fulfill God's will for justice, mercy, and peace, but to make the Torah the heritage of the congregation of Jacob. See, I disagree partly with him, if I can interject at this point, because I think you have both. I think you have to have both. You can't assess more importance to study than you can to the practice. What's the purpose of studying if you can't put it into practice? So you need both.
But there's people who come to Torah studies, not just here, but everywhere, who don't practice, right? And that's considered perfectly legitimate, isn't it? I mean, isn't practice a personal choice? And, wouldn't you say, well, you should at least know what you're rejecting, kind of thing, or know what you're not practicing? And in Reform Judaism, we certainly have this idea that you should study about a practice and then decide whether you find it meaningful. No, Evelyn?
No, I'm trying to verbalize it so that it makes sense, but my feelings are basically that yes, you need both. I still feel strongly about that, but in Reform Judaism, we have the option of choosing the menu, shall we say, of what we choose to participate in and what we don't choose to participate in. And so it almost becomes like a smorgasbord that you take some and reject others. And it's is that typical? It's not typical of any of conservatism or orthodoxy, where it is much more strictured and you're expected to adhere much more closely to what the Torah says. It's in Reform Judaism that I think we have the option of choosing what it is that has meaning for us.
And so, for example, one area we had to negotiate through is wearing a talit when you bless the Torah, or wearing a yarmulke when you bless the Torah on the high holy days. So we put in our honors that we sent out that it is a traditional custom that you should consider doing, that we suggest you might want to do it, but we're not going to obligate someone. So of the 3 Torah blessers on the morning of Rosh Hashanah, I think 2 of them wore talit, and one chose not to, and we're not going to force them, but we tried to encourage it. So that was kind of our compromise. But we don't have a halacha, we don't have a code of Jewish law where everyone has to observe certain things. And there wouldn't be, even among our group of the 11 people here today, I don't think we'd be able to get very far in terms of what do we all accept or not accept in terms of practice. Pam.
If I can just go slightly to a different thing here. Why are we discussing the congregation of Jacob? Isn't Jacob the guy who gave us, his twin and did nasty things? I mean,
Yes, Jacob is considered the forefather of Israel. I mean, yeah, Jacob's name was changed by God to Israel. So B'nai Israel, we are the children of Israel. That means we're the children of Jacob. And just to put in a little bit of biblical scholarship, which is usually the opposite of tradition, a lot of scholars believe that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were completely separate. They weren't children and grandchildren of each other. There were 3 separate traditions from 3 separate tribes, and the Torah puts them together. So Abraham becomes the father of Isaac, and Isaac becomes the father of Jacob. But originally they had nothing to do with each other, and therefore Jacob was one of the tribes, saw Jacob as the forefather. And it's only later that now he becomes the grandson of Abraham. If you actually met Jacob, you might say, Abraham, that wasn't my grandfather. My great grandfather's name was, something else. So yes. And Jacob, of course, was the one that had the 12 sons and the 1 daughter. And he was openly favored Joseph, which created tremendous problems and led to some of his other sons trying to kill Joseph. But a lot of that was Jacob's very poor parenting, clearly. So yes, Pam is showing certain problems, but there's according to the tradition, God chose us for a special relationship, not because our forefathers or foremothers were all that good, but because, well, there just was that relationship. It's like when you have a relationship with family members, you didn't choose to be in that relationship, you just are. And you can't break it because you're sisters or cousins or whatever. So that's a good point, Pam. And if we were to start a religion from scratch, we could do a lot better. And I've thought about that, just starting from scratch. You could get rid of stories like the Binding of Isaac and just start with things that encourage character development and put in my story about the tiger and the cobra and things like that. But people like the connection to something so historical, so ancient, with so many, internal contradictions. It's kind of nice if you can deal with internal contradictions. Sai, comments on this? Donna? Steve?
Well,
Okay, Evelyn, you want to read more?
Yeah, Steinsaltz.
Yes. And
Okay.
just to start you off, Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, I think he died very recently. He was an Israeli from a secular kibbutz, and he became Orthodox, but he was mostly a scholar. He wrote a modern Hebrew commentary to the entire Talmud and other things, and he was just a complete genius. And he helped to popularize Judaism among many secular Israeli circles. So very interesting guy. He dabbled with mysticism, wrote a book that was very influential in mysticism, and definitely a public intellectual in Israel.
Okay. Modern commentator Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz builds on Maimonides' emphasis on the importance of Torah studies as a means of knowing what God wants from us, defining Torah as not only the 5 books of Moses, but also as all the works of the Talmud and subsequent commentaries. Steinsaltz claims that the Torah of the Jews is the essence of divine revelation. It is not only a basis for social, political, and religious life, but is in itself something of supreme value. It is the spiritual map of the universe, for the Torah expresses the divine will and wisdom. The intellectual study of Torah and the emotional involvement in its contents are a form of identification with the divine will, with what may be called God's dream of the existence of the world and the existence of human beings.
Okay, thank you. Stop. Okay, anyone want to try to interpret what is saying here? The Torah of the Jews is the essence of divine revelation. It is not only a basis for social, political, and religious life, but is in itself something of supreme value. Comments?
I like that.
Yeah.
What does that mean, supreme value?
That it's important.
Well, he's already said all the other things that are important, which I would think are just as much of value in a supreme way. What more is God asking or giving?
God's dream of the existence of the world and the existence of human beings. They talk in astrophysics about how the universe is eventually going to end in like billions and billions of years, but they can already, see how things are going to eventually end. But I don't know if our universe is the only universe or what that means. And if it's going to end in billions of years from now, does that have any practical meaning for anybody, even a star? So, I mean, I'm not sure. Okay, well.
I like calling it a spiritual map. I like that phrase, a spiritual map.
The spiritual map of the universe. What does spiritual mean? I mean, I know what a map is, but what is a spiritual map?
Well, in connection with God.
So anything connected to God is spiritual?
I think so.
This is not where God is. This is where God sees other things being. Okay, Evelyn.
Let's see. Knowing Torah is more for Steinsaltz than understanding what God wants for the world and its human beings. Torah is not just an intellectual document for study. It is also law. Torah compels people to behave in certain ways. It is a way of life showing both how to relate inwardly and how to conduct oneself outwardly, practically. One finds the Torah significant in every aspect of community, commerce, agriculture, and industry, in the life of feeling and love, in relations between the sexes, down to the most minute aspects of living, like buttoning one's shoes or lying down to sleep. Steinsaltz's view of the Torah as a divine map of the world, as God's law, which directs the conduct of one's daily business from waking to sleeping, represents a widely held view within Jewish tradition.
And this is from his mystical book, The 13-Petaled Rose. We're running out of time, I see, but we've only really touched the surface of this question. What is the meaning of Torah? What is the meaning of Judaism? And so I'm glad we at least had time to talk about Steinsaltz, even though we may not understand what he's saying. You can see he's trying to elevate the discourse into something more abstract. That Torah is not just a book, and observance is not just, following a few customs. There's something existential about them and something universal and something connected to astrophysics, physics, And, you know, this is something that if we were having homework, I could say, write your understanding of the philosophy of Torah and in no more than 200 pages and send it to me by next week.
100 pages.
But Steve does not allow me to give such homework assignments.
Not yet, not yet, not yet.
Okay,
Would you say that it is essentially a guidebook for humans to live the best life that we can possibly live for ourselves and for our fellow man? I mean, I would classify, in generic terms, I would put it that way.
That sounds
okay,
good.
that sounds good. I'm sure there's a lot of other definitions,
box.
Marcia.
The next box right after that, the evolving Torah. I think that's important, that the Torah, in a
Hey,
way.
Marcia, want to read that quickly?
Okay, the evolving Torah. Torah results from the relationship between God and the Jewish people. The records of our earliest confrontations are uniquely important to us. Lawgivers and prophets, historians and poets gave us a heritage whose study is a religious imperative and whose practice is our chief means to holiness. Rabbis and teachers, philosophers and mystics, gifted Jews in every age, amplify the Torah tradition. For millennia, the creation of Torah has not ceased, and Jewish creativity in our time is adding to the chain of tradition.
And that's from one of the statements of principles that the Reform movement passed. This one is from the 1976 San Francisco statement. Okay, we ran out of time, so I'm going back to Steve to lead us in the Torah blessing after the study of Torah. Thanks for everyone to be here. And if you want to do the optional assignment of a 200-page essay on the meaning of Torah, you have until next Wednesday morning.
Let's see how many you get.
So, and Rabbi, next week we start Genesis again?
Next week, we start Genesis again, if you can believe it. And as I said, if you want to subscribe to Safaria, they will send you their weekly Torah compilation.
Okay. Let us conclude then with the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natalanu Torah emet, v'chaye olam atah b'torkeinu. Baruch atah Adonai, Noten HaTorah. Blessed is Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us a teaching of truth, planting within us eternal life. Blessed is Adonai, giver of the Torah. Amen. Again, my sincere apologies for being late. It will not happen again, I promise. And God willing, I'll be here next week.
Steve, you were going to send us the blessings, you said last week.
Yes, they were sent. They were sent this week.
Yeah, I made it.
Okay. Okay, I'll look further. I'll look.
It's a PDF, I think.
Attachment.
Okay.
And you sent that to Charlotte?
Charlotte has it, and she sent it out to everybody.
Okay, so
thank you.
Donna, call Charlotte if you don't find it.
Okay.
Check the last email that you got to sign in, and it should have I believe it's the first one, first attachment. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, everyone. See you Saturday night or Friday night and then Saturday.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Well, I gotta go back and find that attachment with the new assignments on
I
it.
know, me
I
too.
thought I printed it out, but I apparently didn't. Okay, have a good week.
You too. Bye, Liz. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, Liz. Okay, leave me.